Okay friends, it's time to get started on our job. One of the first things you want to do is come over to the driver's side strut tower, and we're going to start removing this negative terminal. You're going to find that there's two wires that are on this, and each of them is held down by their own nut. I'll use a 15 millimeter with my stubby ratchet. We'll go ahead and remove this. Set that nut aside, grab onto that wire, remove it from there. Give it a little look. You just want to inspect it and make sure it doesn't look like it's broken or damaged in any way. After that, just go ahead and set it aside so it's making no contact with the body whatsoever. After that, go ahead and remove this 15 millimeter nut and do the exact same thing to the other wire. Once again, making sure that we're making no contact with the body. Okay, now right along the front side of the engine here, you're going to find the O2 sensor wire. This is your upstream O2 sensor for the front bank here. We're going to have to start removing this, so I'm just going to reach under, grab onto this area with my index finger, we'll squeeze this in, and then we can separate this. After you have it disconnected, inspect it, and make sure you don't see any funny colors. The next thing that I'm going to do is start removing the O2 sensor from the manifold. To do that, I'm going to use my O2 sensor socket. You can tell that it has a nice slash through it right here to fit the wire through. Let's get this right down onto it, and we'll start removing it by turning it counterclockwise. Now I'm just going to use the tool to go ahead and turn this out the rest of the way until it's loose enough. There's our upstream O2 sensor. Go ahead and put this someplace where you remember exactly where it goes. Now from underneath the vehicle, we're going to come right over to this area here and locate the O2 sensor. Follow that right up to where it connects in. I'm going to squeeze on the tab and then gently remove it. Of course, we'll inspect it. We can set that aside and start removing the O2 sensor from the pipe. Go ahead and spin this right out of here with our tool. Remove that O2 sensor, set it aside. Now it's going to be time to start removing the heat shield from this manifold. What you're going to notice on ours is it's already missing, but overall there's going to be 3 pieces of mounting hardware. Generally they're going to be a 10 millimeter. So you just find one over here, one in towards the center, and then one over further towards the driver's side. Go ahead and remove all 3 of those and then the shield. Now we're going to move along to the bracket that holds the dipstick tube to the engine. We're just going to go ahead and follow that bracket right to the 15 millimeter headed bolt and remove that bolt. Now this should be able to flex around a little bit. So now we're going to start unbolting the manifold from the engine. You're going to need a tool that looks just like this. This is considered an inverted Torx and it's a size 12. I'm going to start looking for my 6 mounting bolts for this. There's one all the way over on the passenger side. I'll start with that one. Once it's out, I'll show you what it looks like. Be careful not to break these off in the engine. Okay. So there's that bolt. That's what the end looks like. This 4th one. Now we can grab that 5th one. This one here. Now I'm just going to wiggle this manifold around a little bit here. This last bolt out of there. Now we're going to make our way back underneath the vehicle and we're going to start disconnecting the pipe from this area right here. I'm going to use a 14 millimeter wrench to hold the nut and 14 to remove the bolt. There's one. Now that everything's unbolted, we can start pulling this down. But before we go ahead and start doing that, take a look up here. You can see right where the starter is. Now that starter wire that's out in the open is a power wire. It's super important that you made sure that you disconnected that negative terminal before you continue. Now at this point, I'm just going to carefully grab onto the pipe. We're going to break it free from this area here and then try to bring it down and out. There it is, friends. Now with the manifold out of there, we're going to pay attention to the engine. Typically, you're going to find that the gasket is stuck to that. So I'm just going to reach up inside here with a screwdriver and just gently pry it away. We can remove this from the vehicle, set it aside. Now that the gasket's off of there, the next area that we want to pay attention to is the engine itself, where that gasket could ride. You're going to see 3 ports that lead into the engine. You want to make sure that these are clean and free of any debris. To clean these up, it's best to use a sanding block so you can make this as level as possible. Once you have the engine cleaned down, let's continue on to cleaning and inspecting our bolts. Make sure you replace any as necessary. After that, let's make sure the flange is good on the Y pipe. Go ahead and sand that down. Make sure it's clean and free of any debris. Okay, now let's go ahead and grab one of our manifold mounting bolts. We're going to go ahead and put it right into the hole right here into the engine. Just started in there a few good threads to hold it steady. All right, now we can get ready to prepare our manifold and gasket. I'm just going to take that gasket, rest it right up against the back side of the manifold on the flange. Now let's take 2 of our mounting bolts and we're going to come through this hole right here and that one right there. This is essentially just going to hold the gasket in place for us. And press it right through. Same to this one. Okay. Now we can take the manifold and gasket, put it up and into position. Okay, now we can go ahead and take that manifold. We're going to slide the ear right over that mounting bolt we put in there. Bring this down, get it lined up as well. All right, make sure this is resting up against the engine. We'll continue up top and start snugging up everything to the engine. Now from up top, let's go ahead and get this lined up again. I'm going to try to start in 2 of my bolts here. Super important to make sure you start all 6 of these into the engine. Make sure they're going in well before you go ahead and snug any of them up. Okay, now that we have them all started, let's go ahead and bottom them out, starting from the center, working our way outward. Okay, so now we can start torquing each of these down. We're going to start from the very center, working our way out just as we did before. When we torque these, we're going to torque them to 200 inch-pounds. Now for good measure, we're just going to go back through and do the exact same thing. All right, now from underneath the vehicle, let's start putting this together. We're going to come right over to the flange. We'll get it lined up. Go ahead and take both of your mounting bolts. We'll start them right through. All right, now when you start tightening these up, you want to make sure you tighten them as evenly as possible. You don't want to just tighten this one down and have this off kilter, because then you're going to have an exhaust leak. We'll just go ahead and start snugging them, and then when we torque them, we're going to torque them to 275 inch-pounds. Now it's time to install our downstream O2 sensor. Let's go ahead and screw it in. We want to put just a teeny bit of copper never sees just on the threaded area, but avoid the sensing unit along this area. Screw this in by hand until it bottoms out. Now let's make sure it's nice and tight. Okay. That feels good right there. Now let's plug it in. Listen for a click, give it a tug to make sure it's secure. Now from back up top, if you had the shield, go ahead and put that on now. After you've done that, we'll continue on to the oil dipstick tube. We want to, of course, make sure that you resecure this with its mounting bolt. Trying to get this lined up. So right there it's bottomed out. Just give it a little bit more just to make sure it's nice and tight. Double check to make sure it's secure, it's not wobbling around. Now it's time to install the upstream O2 sensor. Go ahead and screw that right into the manifold, and then of course we'll plug it in. Okay, that feels like it bottomed out right there. Just give it a little bit more just to make sure it's completely secured. Now we can plug it in right over here. Press it in, listen for a click. There it is. Give it a little tug to make sure it's secure, and also make sure the wire's far enough away from the fan.